Hello everybody, my name is Hellkaiser and welcome to the final episode of DMC Devil May Cry. I apologize if this sounds a little strange, but when I originally recorded this episode, I recorded this episode about 6 months ago. This was in December and it's now almost been a year. Or wait, that said it's backwards. So I recorded this in February and it's now November. I've been trying to upload this for a long time, but the audio that I recorded when I recorded this episode live was corrupted, and I've tried to fix it, and it's not been fixed. And I was going to re-record the episode, and I just keep forgetting to do it, and I need to do the Virgil's Downfall DLC, so I'm just going to try to talk over this, and it won't be great, but it's better than nothing. Okay, so just standard stuff, checking my abilities. I don't recall what all I'm trying to get here. I think I upgraded Kablooey. Or I'm thinking about upgrading. No, I didn't. Okay, I think, did I ever get all the upgrades for... My favorite weapons when I played through this game was Eric's, or whatever it was called, the fist weapon, and Osiris, the scythe. I quite liked Aquila, but I felt like it just never worked as well as it was supposed to. It's pretty much... It's not got much moves. It's mostly meant just to do the one or two things that it does, and that's it. It's to chain together with your other combos. I've been playing a lot of Bayonetta now because I've been recording Bayonetta for the channel, and Bayonetta 3's already come out, so I've been playing some of it. And I'm telling you, when you look at the series, this game has more in common with Bayonetta than it really does with Devil May Cry. I've said that before, but it is staggering that when you look at it as a whole package, they really were trying to sell you another Bayonetta game. I don't think that the dev team ever played Devil May Cry, if you really want to know the truth.
You're on your own from here.
I know a lot of people love the... Dang. I know a lot of people like the level design in this game. I personally have been kind of critical of it. I think it changes way too much to ever really have its own art style. I think that if you're going to do this limbo where things are just broken chunks flying in the air, this is the best example of it. I like the hellfire looking things that fly up out of the ground. But it's still just little tiny arenas, and it becomes annoying extremely quickly. But I will admit, the combat is rough as cob sometimes because of the fact you don't have a targeting system. So some abilities like Stinger and stuff just don't work very well. Or when you try to target the enemies with the Orphon or the Whip, whatever you wish to call it. But when it does work, it's some of the best combat Devil May Cry has ever had. At the end of this, I will rate the games for you guys, or I might just wait to do that until after I play the Virgil's Downfall DLC. Well, no, I'll do it at the end. Okay, time for another combat arena. I don't know what those chainsaw things are called now, but they are both at the same time one of my favorite things to fight and one of my least favorite things to fight. But see what I mean about the whip? Sometimes he just aims for a target and he misses it. That's why, like I said, fun combat, but half the time you're trying to pull something off and it pisses you off more than anything in the world when it misses without you trying to. And I actually thought I was doing pretty good here. And then it doesn't last very long, see, because of stuff like that. There's a bit too much delay. You're trying to move quickly, and you don't always feel like you can move very quickly because of the way that there's delays, and too many enemies can get... You're too close to your camera. One thing I'll say about Bayonetta is the new game, I had a lot of trouble finding my character during some of the battles, which caused me to take damage unnecessarily. But in this game, there's too many enemies too close to you, and the camera is too close to Dante, so you end up getting hit by things without any intention of getting hit by them. And then I start cocking it up here after I had a pretty good combo going. I will admit I made some mistakes of my own, but sometimes it just feels like you're trying to do it right and the game doesn't give you much of an opportunity to. That was a kind of cool ending there. I don't know why they focused on Dante's face for less than 4 seconds there. See, and again, my whip didn't work twice in a row. And this is with this is the definitive edition, may I remind you. This is with the lock-on that they added, but if they didn't really add it, it just... They put a Band-Aid on a gushing wound. I really thought that knocking her into the flames there would have killed her. Because they had environmental things, like with the carnival ride in the very first level. See, finally, my whip worked the way I wanted it to. I wish I had got that Angel Evade much earlier in the game, because it was the best move I've had for closing the distance between these guys. It feels like that should have been one of the first upgrades they encourage you to buy. That should have been like a tutorial thing to buy, because it's such a good thing to have. And if I didn't know better, I would have been without it, because I'd forgotten it from my other playthroughs. I don't know why I forgot it. And then I died and had to use a gold orb. I could have used my Devil Trigger, because it's past that limit. I don't know why I just didn't pop it. And there we go. At least I got a triple S, and then I got an S. Back through the fire and the flames we go. I like how you can see like those bodies or whatever it's supposed to be flying up before the flames come up. I think that gives you a really good indication of what you're supposed to be looking for. Crap. And now I had to do this whole section again. Yeah, I know that platforming has never been Devil May Cry's strong suit, but this game really tried to fix the platforming, and it still is kind of rough around the edges because it's mostly just you jump to a few things and then you do a lot of grapples. And as you can see, I'm grappling and I'm trying, but I just keep falling off the ledge. I'm not doing it wrong on purpose, and I'm not trying to do nothing wrong. I do the double jump and I do the angel glide thing, but I still can't make it to that ledge. See, you barely make it. Why would they put it so that you're barely skimming your teeth along the edge there? And we found a key. I don't think I ever found the door that's supposed to go to. Yeah, that Angel Evade is just great for getting around a little bit easier, too. Great, and Chainsaw Man. I haven't got to see much of that anime yet, and I haven't read the manga, but I've heard good things about it. I need to check out that anime. I love that scythe. I wish they would incorporate a scythe into the next Devil May Cry game, because that was the only weapon I missed from this remake. I love that scythe. I've always liked those kind of weapons. Whenever I play D&D or anything like that, my weapon of choice is always like a scythe if I get any sort of say in what kind of weapons I use. I really liked Darksiders 2 when I was a kid, and I loved playing his death with his scythes. I'm not good at saying that word. And I just really end up liking it, so I always like to use games with scythes. Even, what was that game? Dante's Inferno. I love that game just because you get to use a scythe. So, I don't recall what all I get here. I don't think I ever upgraded the Demon Evade because it's not as good as any of the other things. I think I upgrade Stinger because that's about the best thing I could have got there. Just to be able to close the gap easier. Or maybe the overdrive because I used that so much. Yeah, I'm trying to debate between them. Just pick one, me. Just go for the Stinger. I think that's the best thing you can use. Yeah, I never use the drive. I always generally go for overdrive, so it'd be better for that. Come on, pick. Man, I spent a lot of time debating here. Wasting time. Okay, so I finally picked something I wasn't looking at that point. I reached down to get a drink, so... Time for another battle, but this is just those regular Steigen things. Take a second to take a smoke break while I do the fighting here. Maybe it's just me, but these platforming sections just were more annoying than anything. This is preparing for the final boss fight of the game. This big section that you've been waiting for from, you know, the minute you first see Mundus. And instead of taking you into the fight like they should have, you're literally doing a platforming section for no good reason at this point. And as you can see, I'm still struggling with that camera because they put it too close to the character. And then the platform kind of wiggles or drops or whatever it does there. I still hate the way that they just gave him one little patch of gray hair there. It's not the gray hair, the white hair, you know, because I like the white hair Dante better. It's just, why position it just as a little patch, you know? Why not just let that have turned his hair completely white from that point on? That would have made more sense. I don't know why I chose to do the fireworks there. I felt like I could have just comboed her much better if I hadn't done that. I can't tell if my video player's freezing up or what, but I can't see what's going on. I hope this isn't how the gameplay footage looks. Let me reverse it. Yeah, it's my video player is not working very well. I apologize. Man, it's just barely running. That's why I hate the standard video player on Windows. I can hear myself fighting, but I can't see what I'm doing. Apparently I got a parry. That's all I can see on my screen. Okay, I can't see nothing now. I'm just going to try to... So it plays good. Oh no, it's just playing bad. I'm just going to close out the video and rewind it back. I apologize. Let me make sure that Audacity's still... Yeah, it's still working. This is why I hate trying to do this over, because it's just problems, and you don't mean for it to be. Okay, so I think I'm back to where I was, so I hope I'm not trying to talk above the footage. But like I said, if there's an issue, please understand. I tried to do this. I should have just probably recorded this over. But frankly, I'm not going to say I didn't enjoy some bits of this game, but I didn't enjoy watching the cutscenes. What I said at the end of this recording originally was simply, if you want to play this game, which you can pick it up dirt cheap on sale anymore, I encourage you to do that, but I encourage you to do that by skipping all the cutscenes or muting them and coming up with your own story in your head. I've been recording a lot of The Last of Us, as you've seen on the channel, and I talked about in the last episode I did, which will probably be uploaded, or it probably is already uploaded before this video come out, and now this is skipping again. Kidatari came up with a really good ending. He came up with 2 good endings for The Last of Us Part 2 in his video, and both of them were better than the game we got. And I've come up with stories, and I think I've mentioned them before, and I might mention one again at the end of this video, that I've come up with for this game that would make it a much better title than it is in terms of its story. And I'm just a fan. And professionals were paid to do this. I don't know why this video player cannot play a simple video. Okay, I think I'm back to where I was, roughly. Again, I apologize if anything's sort of off sync. I'm trying my best here, but the video player is not in agreement with me. I can't believe I was able to hook the dream guy. That was a cool shotgun blast to take out that witch. I don't know if I've already done it or what, because I might be a little bit ahead of you guys. I'm sorry. I'm trying to do my best to make the best out of this situation. I do like how these guys can parry you, but I find them to be just... They're too different from every other enemy you fight in this game, that they're hard to battle because they're faster, they can parry, they can block a lot of your moves, and I wonder why they didn't choose these enemies a lot sooner in the game, or try to make more of the enemies like them. Okay, this still is not working, so I'm going to try something slightly different. That is not working. Okay. Yeah, I can't get the video to view. So here's what I'm going to do to save both of us some time and a lot of headache and effort, is I'm just going to give you my review. I've turned the video off. Whatever, I think I recorded for about 17 minutes now. And so the rest of the video will be without sound from me. I'll just be playing the game. But I'm just going to go ahead and give you the review as as the game plays, and you can just watch the gameplay and listen to the story, and I'll probably cut as soon as I finish this. DMC Devil May Cry is one of, at the same time, the best platform for a reboot and the worst reboot of all time. when I say the best platform, I mean they had the right idea. They took every good rivals learned to adapt from each other. I'm a massive Metalhead fan. Two of my favorite bands are Metallica and Megadeth. And to try to use their story as an example here, Dave Mustaine was kicked out of Metallica and he formed Megadeth. And the song The Four Horsemen on the first album of Metallica was written by him, and it was originally called The Mechanics. And that song was later featured on his first album, Killing Is My Business and Business Is Good. There's a lot of similarities between the songs, and fans will argue with you over which one has the better solo. In my opinion, it's Mechanics. Mechanics is overall just a better song. The Four Horsemen is good. Lyrically,
Yeah, that's right.
it's got more going on than Mechanics. Mechanics is an affair told through metaphors, which is a great song. And I said I think it's the better song, but in terms of lyrics, James is one of the greatest lyricists in my opinion of all time. He does a good job with the lyrics, but the music is not as good. It is a... Every time I hear the original Kill 'Em All album, when Four Horsemen plays, I think, wow, that's just a crappy Megadeth's song, or the worst version of that song. But to switch to the other end, when Megadeth started their album, you could tell for a lot of years Mustaine was known as one of a bad guy, of the villain of the metal industry, because he had a grudge, which I see a lot of myself in his character and his story. You know, my mom always says I can hold a grudge with the best of them. I'm a Leo. When somebody betrays me, I feel that hurt for a long time, and it takes me a long time, if never, to forgive people. And instead of just holding the grudge, he wanted to beat Metallica at his own game. So he played that whole album harder and faster, and especially with Mechanics, you can feel that desperateness, because the Four Horsemen had already been out, you know, on shelves, and people had heard that, and so you can hear how much there's that need to play it quicker. And so they brought out the best in each other through that rivalry until the 90s, when Metallica just decided to take a break for some reason, essentially. But that's what I like about rivalries. They can teach you to be better, you know, at what you do. And Bayonetta and Devil May Cry really are the only two games in the world that can compete with each other, because there's quite nothing like Devil May Cry. There's been a lot of games that have kind of got a similar formula. Even a Nightmare Before Christmas game, which, if I'm not mistaken, it was made by Capcom, and I think they just took the rigging from the original DMC and just stuck Jack Skellington over it, because it's the same animations and all sorts of stuff. But there's never been a game like any of them. You know, even Castlevania, I think it was Lament of Innocence, was just a Devil May Cry clone. And then some people like to use the term God of War clone, but God of War came out after Devil May Cry, so realistically it's a Devil May Cry clone, in my opinion, or it's an evolution of that formula. Bayonetta, when it finally came out on the scene, it doesn't play like Devil May Cry, but it does at the same time. There's enough similarities that fans of one can enjoy the other, and that's why I consider them a rival series, and they were originally made by the same man. But Bayonetta is a little bit slightly tweaked formula, and then Devil May Cry is of course, its formula. And you could tell they tried to see what the first Bayonetta game did right, because in my opinion, the original Bayonetta, despite its flaws, and if you've seen my series, and I'm going to start uploading more on that, I promise, the cutscenes being mostly like still images with the characters talking over it, and the fact that the game demands almost absolute perfection out of you, especially on the first playthrough, to get good scores, I think is a bit much. But I think the voice acting is phenomenal. The story, I can barely make it out. I know what the idea of it is, but I still couldn't tell you what the story really is about. But the gameplay is front and center and is phenomenal. The character of Bayonetta is so interesting to watch. Every one of her actions is super interesting. She's one of these characters that just doesn't give a shit about anything but herself. She dances on stripper poles out of levers and stuff because she wants to. Every time someone touches her, she moans like she's in the middle of a porno. And she's got almost every fetish in the world. But she's fine with it. She's doing it for the audience, but at the same time she's doing it for herself. It ain't like she's one of the most sexualized and unsexualized characters at the same time. And then you look at Dante, and he's sort of a very similar character, especially once you compare DMC 3 onward. He's brash, he's arrogant, he's very cocky, and he does what he wants, when he wants, and just rolls with it. He beats Nevin, turns her into a guitar, and then plays a guitar solo on her in the middle of a hell-infested tower. Lady fires a missile at him, and he just rides it like a surfboard and is having the time of his life. That's what makes these characters compelling. They're in a world where it's really dark and morbid. You think about the ending of Bayonetta, world-ending threat is coming down to destroy everything. And you look at DMC, multiple world-ending threats at a time. And in his games, Mundus, the creator, I don't know if the tower would have ended the world, but that's a possibility. And then Urizen. And so all these were world-ending threats. They both are cocky characters that can take on world-ending threats. And then you get to the reboot. And so they wanted to... And this is a fact. The studio executives at Capcom forced the makers of DMC4 to add Nero into the game. That is a fact. You can look it up. They did not want Nero. But the producers didn't want Dante in the game. That's one of the reasons the game was rushed so heavily and stuff. I guess they figured that because they did the Nero sections first, they wouldn't have time to finish Dante's sections. I don't know what was going on there. There's YouTube videos out there that can probably give you a much better explanation of that game's creation than I can. But that gives you an idea of the state of mind of Capcom. So when the reboot was first being done, they told, is it Team Ninja or is it Ninja Theory? I think it's Ninja Theory. Make the character opposite of Dante. And so when that first E3 trailer dropped, I quite liked that trailer, believe it. I don't like the way he looks. He looks like a crackhead. But I like the smoking. I think that was kind of like a cool, rebellious thing. I mean, they took his personality from Nero, but also his weapon is what they claimed. His weapon's called Rebellion, so he is a rebel. I liked the spray-painted jacket and the shoe-polished hair. I prefer the white hair, but I like the idea that he's just hiding his hair. You could still see the gray or the white coming through from underneath that shoe polish. It's like he's trying to blend in with people, which I actually thought they should have stuck with that idea, that he just sticks shoe polish or something in his hair because he doesn't want people to think of him as a freak. I felt like there could have been a story to tell there with the character, and then because people complained about the smoking and all that, they changed some stuff. But you could see at the end of the game's credits, when you get to that, if you watch that part, or if I leave that in, his rigging when they did the modeling still has a cigarette in his mouth, so they just took it off, apparently, from some of the cutscenes. But, I'm a smoker, and so it didn't bother me. But anyway, when you get to the finished product, he doesn't even resemble Nero, because Nero was cocky and brash, but at least he had redeeming qualities. He had a woman that he loved. He had a friend that he cared for as a brother, and he's having to hide his person, who he is from these people, because he's afraid of being treated like a freak. So why didn't they just take his story from 4 and just translate that character qualities? Because really, we don't even get Nero in his personality. But there is a lot of things that seem more like Nero. So for example, his pistol is called the Blue Rose. And in the earlier levels of the game, Eva's symbol is a blue rose. I didn't know if that was intentional or what. And so I don't know what they were thinking about making a reboot with the character being told to be the opposite of everything that he already was. And then not really having any identity at all. Because the reason I played DMC, the story of Bayonetta and DMC, and I know people are complaining, like I've never seen before, about Bayonetta 3's story. But I've told you, this is at least the first story I can understand the plot, so I give them credit for making it simpler. I think this is the best story the game has had, because I can understand what's going on. But I don't play Bayonetta and I don't play DMC for the story. You know, to give a kind of adult analogy, it's like watching a porn film for the plot. Nobody does that. You're there for the gameplay, because that's what these games do. At the time, when Devil May Cry 3 first came out, there was nothing like it on the market. The ability to jump up in the air and spin around shooting your guns like a madman and run up walls and backflip off of them and throw your sword into an enemy and then surf on them, and all the stuff you could do in that game made you feel like a badass. And it's still to this day one of the most cool games and one of my favorite games of the PS2 era, and one of my favorite games of all time. And up until 5 came out, it was the best game in the series. When DMC 4 came out, it was rough around the edges, but being able to switch styles was a welcome change, and I'm glad in the Nintendo Switch version we can switch styles at will. Still making DMC 3 one of the most wonderful games to play, and one of the most essential purchases on that system. But this reboot didn't really seem to take the style system is gone, which I guess if you incorporate all the things you can do, such as the trickster, like you could with the dashes, and the rainstorm and all that stuff, then it's fine. But they took out Royal Guard, but they put a parry system in, so I guess, there was always a parry system, so I guess they just took out Royal Guard in general. I like the idea of trying to simplify the combat. I think it was working very well to a point. Having your demon weapons on one arm, and then or one trigger, and your angel weapons on the other, and then Rebellion in the middle. But at the same time, it's also not a good system, because color-coded enemies ruin that. They break the flow of combat. If you notice, the mainline Devil May Cry series and Bayonetta never have color-coded enemies. They don't have enemies that can slow your pacing. You don't want anything to slow that frantic combat loop, because that's the reason people play those games. You know, when I play Bayonetta, I expect to taunt an enemy, slow down time with Witch Time, and then pull off a badass combo and rinse and repeat it. When I'm playing as Dante, I plan to leap in the air with Rainstorm and then start Trickster, Royal Guard, Swordmaster, Trickster, Royal Guard, over and over again until everything is dead. That's just what those games are about. They're about killing things with as much style as humanly possible. And so, having to stop, and that literally makes your brain have to stick the brakes on it, to think of which enemy color to deal with and stuff like that, was a stupid idea. And the definitive edition was supposed to fix that, but it did not. The Devil Trigger in this game is ridiculous. Both the Devil Trigger ideas that Bayonetta has had, the climax thing, and then the new demon masquerade forms, have both been better ideas than anything that this game had in mind. Devil Trigger is simple. It's supposed to restore your health and give you a damage and speed boost. Why they made everything levitate, I don't know. I get the idea was to make it look like Dante is extremely powerful, and that's just a fraction of his power. But there's better ways of showing that. You could do that in a cutscene. In the cutscenes, Dante reloads his guns, and so does Lady and stuff. But in the gameplay, you don't reload your guns, because that's in a cutscene, reloading looks badass, but in gameplay, it slows the pacing down. And so you look at like Doom Eternal and Doom 2016. Both of those games, especially Eternal, is just raw adrenaline in a game form. Every system in that game has been crafted to make the action as frantic and non-stop as possible. And I know some people don't like the limited ammo, but they design that so you have to constantly switch weapons, manage that resource without ever stopping combat. When you're low on ammo, chainsaw. When there's big enemies, use the crucible. You know, keep switching, maneuver. It's a dance. that you got to learn, and when you learn it, it's one of the most engaging combat experiences in any game you'll ever play.
One more.
And that's realistically what they had an opportunity to do with the reboot here, is they could have made the combat without the style switching, and without, little gripes here and there, like having to, so like on the PS3, you had to swap your weapons in the menu, and then they, in 4 they kind of started to fix that, but they could have made that easy. They tried to make it easier with the triggers, but because of that, you almost never, if you watch my whole playthrough, I almost never used the sword, Rebellion at all, except for certain moves. It doesn't have enough moves, because it's like Aquila. It's meant to bridge the gap between your combos. And I feel like that's a good idea and a bad idea at the same time. Because now, you have more weapons, than some Devil May Cry games at once. I can't remember how many. Let's see. You get Nevin, Beowulf, Agni, and Rudra. And if you get another melee weapon in 3, I don't remember. But you get like 3 or 4 melee weapons in DMC 3 and a bunch of pistols and stuff. And in the reboot, you get 2 angel weapons, 2 demon weapons, your sword, and 3 pistols, which is about the same. But at the same time, you got to think about when each weapon only has about 6 moves per weapon. When you look at the number of moves you can do with some of the weapons in other DMC games, like look at DMC 5. I can't remember what's the name of Dante's weapon in 5. I can't remember what his fist weapon is in that game. But there's separate moves for punching and kicking. There's a lot of maneuvers. Cavalry has a lot of moves in it. Devil Sword Dante has a lot of stuff in it. Every weapon has quite a few things you can do with it. Heck, even something as simple as the pistols, which in this case Dr. Faust, is a very high skill floor weapon that you can use. And so everything there, even though there's equal amount of weapons in both, you can do more with the weapons in DMC 5, and you can watch some insane combo videos on that game. So it feels like there's a bit too much simplification going on. You look at Bayonetta, and there's so many weapons, and there's so many combos per weapon that you can get lost in some of those combos I've never even pulled off, because of just how complex they design those games. So they decided to change the character, and at the same time they simplified the combat to a almost ridiculous degree. So I'm almost at the end of this idea here, and then now we get to the plot. The plot of this game is very simple when you compare it to Bayonetta 1 and 2, and you compare it to most of the DMC trilogy in terms of just how simple it is. You don't have to remember a lot of people's names or the timeline, because I know for a while DMC 2 kind of fluctuated between a lot of the games in the series as to where it went. But this game has, at the same time, it has a very interesting plot, but the writers really let it down. And as a writer myself, I'm working on my first full-length novel, and the story of the Nephilim, the half angels, half demons, in this game inspired my book.
Here we go.
As a kid, I really liked the idea of a half angel, half demon trying to find the place in the world. And I've worked on that story since this game first came out, and I'm finally almost getting it ready to publish.
Where'd you learn to do that? What?
But that's something to discuss at a later date. But
Okay.
you got an excellent story. You have 2 twin brothers that don't really fit in with humanity. They're being chased by a demon, and they're trying to take him out and get revenge for their family. Very simple story, but at the same time they managed to make it extremely strange. Mostly because Dante is a dick, and he doesn't seem to care about the story, and he's dismissive of a lot of it. But I think they tried to make it they tried to show him as a really bad asshole at the beginning of the game, and as he's with his brother, and I comment on this a lot of the series,
This is it, Dante.
the more he talks to Virgil, he's very soft around his brother once he recognizes him and remembers him. And he's very friendly, and he starts to become more and more friendly as the game comes along, or at least less of an asshole. But at the end of the game, he's still an asshole. And then the whole thing with Mundus. Realistically speaking, as a writer myself, and if you wanted to know my version of the story of this game, it would be, you know, Dante figures out Virgil's his brother. He tries to help him and get revenge for their mother. But as the story progresses, the more Dante and Virgil do, and I would have Virgil as a playable character, taking turns doing missions. Like Virgil deals with the Raptor News while Dante deals with the Virility Factory. They both start to make difficult choices, and they realize that how ingrained Mundus is into society, and they're doing more harm than good to the world. And so is it worth their revenge to destroy so much? And then when you have the part with Mundus's mistress having the child, I think that was a shock factor thing when Virgil shot the kid, or shot the fetus, whatever you wish to use to describe it. To me, it's an unborn child. It's a child. Now, it's a demon, and it's already fought us, which was a sickening boss fight. But should he have done that? And I think that that was a bold thing, showing like technically what you could consider an abortion. But I liked what they were trying to do, but again, it was a misguided attempt. Show the world being affected, because really, we're not going to care if Mundus is hurt that he lost his kid. But you might be at this scene already in the game, or you might have just passed it, because like I said, I can't see the video. When Dante reaches Mundus in this episode, he says something to him like, yeah, I killed your kid, and I killed your whore, and a bunch of other stuff, and enrages Mundus. And he's doing that just because Virgil told him to, or Cat, one of them said distract him. But he should have been doing that, you know, of his own volition. You're just angry, like, yes, you killed my mother, you killed my father, so I'm going to destroy everything you own. And that would line up with what Phineas said at the beginning, in the Raptor News thing. When Mundus dies, who's going to take his place? And then that adds that moral layer of the story, and once the boss fight is like happening, or as Dante says that, I would have had Phineas's voice go off in his head, and he starts to realize, oh my god, I'm becoming Mundus. I'm just as bad as he is. You know, he killed a mother in front of her child, so now I've killed his mistress and his child in front of him. You know, I'm no better than he is in the end. And then after getting rid of him, that would make more sense as to why when Virgil says, okay, now the path is clear for us to rule, he doesn't take it. But at the same time, that whole ending was not really well. I would have cut right after they killed Mundus and just let him say, well, there's a lot of work to be done to fix this world, and say, yeah, there is. And then just kind of cut there and let them be friends. Dante and Virgil don't have to be rivals. They had to be rivals in the mainline series because DMC 1 was still canon to 3. And because 3 was a prequel, they had to show Virgil die, or so he can become under Mundus's control for 1. So that rivalry was set up solely out of need, not necessarily out of the fact they wanted to. And this was a great opportunity to show more of Virgil, show more of his thought process, let us get invested in him as a character. But it's hard to get invested in him when the only thing he does is be just as bad of an asshole as Dante. He doesn't care about Kat when she's being arrested. He's only concerned with the data. He isn't trying to help us fight, which would have been a great opportunity to see him fight. There was a lot of missed opportunities in this game. But to me, showing Dante because he's supposed to represent the demon and Virgil's supposed to represent the angel. Let Dante become as dirty as he can get and as dark as he can get, And maybe even let Virgil comment that maybe this isn't worth it, and let Dante be the one that keeps pushing it forward. And then, once Virgil has kind of gotten a little bit down the dark path as well, it's Dante that tries to realize their mistakes and tries to prevent it. That would have been interesting. Or he could have spared Mundus's life. You know, I don't necessarily agree with that, but you know, you could make his character... It's called character development. For example, one of the things I learned... I forget who told me this, but I was talking about books with somebody, and they said, one of the first things you need to learn about character arcs is guy smokes cigarettes, guy meets girl, falls in love with girl, she doesn't like smokers, he loses girl, he stops smoking cigarettes, guy gets girl back. You know, that's a simple premise, but you know, that's character development. He does something for the person he loves to make him change, arguably for the better, for the worse, but he does it for that person.
Okay, Dante?
And Dante doesn't really have that. He never does anything for anybody else's sake but his own, except for rescuing Kat. And when he decides to disagree with Virgil about taking over and ruling the humans, realistically, why not rule them? They are the most powerful beings in the world, and they can protect them. And Dante does say this world is under my protection, but he could be the ruler of it and protect it. He could help them. You know, their father Sparta in the mainline series was a demon in hell, and for some reason turned against the other demons and waged war against them. And we never know the reason why. It's Dante's story could mirror that. You know, he could become a guardian of this world and protect it, you know, and try to become something bigger than himself and mirror his father's story. He's gone from being this deadbeat loser who dyes his hair and tries to hide and just spends his time drinking and sleeping around trying to ease his pain of existence, and to trying to become a hero, a King Arthur figure sort of thing, if you will. There was so much that could have been done with his story to make him a better character, but at the end of the day, I didn't like Dante when the game started, and I didn't really care much about him by the time the game ended. And the fact that they turned Virgil into a villain at the last second felt very tacked on, like they just didn't know what to do with his character. And so that's about my idea, or my review for this game, at least its story and my thoughts on it. When you look at the concept art for the game, there was much better design choices for Dante. There was an awesome looking design for the sword. A lot of the enemy design looked better. Concept art looked better. It's like they looked at all this artwork that they had designed for this game, and they said, this is some really great designs, but I'm going to go with the most bland and uninspired bits I can. I don't like Dante's jacket. Rebellion, I can barely remember what it looks like. The only weapon design I actually really like in this game is his pistols. Ebony and Ivory look like an updated version of themselves. I like the way they kind of look like they're carved from one piece. I love the scroll work. In fact, I actually have ordered, you know, I have them for a long time, prop versions of the original Ebony and Ivory and of the reboots Ebony and Ivory. But other than that, there's not very many, like the cat designs. You can look at the cat designs. There's some really good designs for that character. There's one with like blue hair and a guitar, and she rides a motorcycle. She looks badass. She looks like she could be like this game's version of Lady or Trish, and actually have been helpful to the team, maybe even a playable character. But they decided to just have her be wearing a hoodie and cut off shorts and be this uninspired, not very helpful background character. And in fact, she's a witch. So yeah, that's very similar to Bayonetta. And so that's my opinion on this game. Gameplay is okay. It's better than okay. It's a very great combat system. It's simple, and they wanted it to be simple to make you look like a badass, but the color-coded enemies, the fact that the lock-on, even in this definitive version, is very finicky and barely works, and the fact that the camera is too close to your character at times, which causes you to get hit unnecessarily, hamper the experience. And this is supposed to be the definitive edition. What they should have done is taken about another year, because I believe the original game released in 2013, and the reboot, or the definitive edition, came out the next year. They should have waited about an extra year, And they should have actually tried to implement a proper lock-on system. They should have tried to fix some of the little problems. Completely remove color-coded enemies. And just done little things here and there, and it would have been a much better experience. But as a game standing on its own, not as a Devil May Cry game, it's a game with a lot of missed potential. I'd say standing on its own, it's a 7.5 out of 10, maybe an 8. The story is the main letdown and those little combat tweaks I mentioned, but it would have been a fantastic start for a new IP, minus the bad story. As a Devil May Cry game, it's a 5 out of 10. You have combat that is a shadow of what it could be. It works sometimes, but when it doesn't work, it lets you down hard. And the story is such a slap in the face to the fans. In fact, the developers called Dante a gay cowboy, and that was their defense for the way they made him look like an asshole, because the original Dante is apparently not good enough. Insulting your fan base is never going to make people like you or your characters. They chose a bad call there, and that was stupid. But there's still something worth playing here. These are the same guys that made Heavenly Sword and ended up making Hellblade, but that's a completely separate game. But if you've ever played Heavenly Sword, it was a fantastic game, and it had sort of the makings of that God of War, Devil May Cry series. It's a shame that it never really did more than that. I'll try to play that on the channel at some point. But unfortunately, they didn't do much better here. The music in this game, if you've ever listened to I'm not into aggro tech by any means. The instrumentals are fantastic. Combi Christ does a great job on the music in this game. But other than decent music and decent gameplay, the story will insult you in more ways than one if you're a fan of the series in any way. And so don't pick it up unless you're not going to listen to the story. Just skip the cutscenes or mute them and come up with your own idea and try to have fun with it. But it's cheap enough now that it's worth playing, and it was always worth playing. It just wasn't worth being called DMC. So anyway, I hope you guys will enjoy whatever's left of this gameplay footage. Sorry if I've rambled on. Sorry it took me so long to upload this. I will do the Virgil's Downfall DLC, and then we'll have completed all of the Devil May Cry franchise. No word yet on DMC 6. There was that mobile phone game. Let me actually pull it up while I'm on recording with you guys. DMC Peak of Combat or something like that. It's a mobile phone game that still hasn't released here in America yet. Or maybe it has, I don't know. Pinnacle of Combat is what it's called. Or it's been out since June in China, but it's not been released here in America yet. I don't know when they are going to do it. Some of the trailers I've seen for it, for a mobile port, it actually looks pretty good. But realistically speaking, it's not a Devil May Cry game in terms of a full-fledged one. But if you've never played any of these games, or if you haven't checked out any of the other DMC games in my channel, all of the games except for 2 are playable and are still, except for this game's story, fantastic across the board to play. You will get a lot of fun out, even if you're not super good at the combos. They're a lot of fun to play. DMC 3 and 5 are the 2 best games, and that's the ones I'd start out with if I was you, followed by the original. Especially if you're a fan of Bayonetta, you know, because it's made by the same guy. And then DMC 4 is, in my opinion, the most value of all the series, because you get Dante, Nero, Virgil, Trish, Lady to play as. You have so many playable characters. And Lady and Trish play so much different than Dante and Nero and Virgil that it's legitimately fun to play. Lady can just one-shot enemies almost with a fully charged blast from Matilda, and Virgil, of course, is as broken as ever, and so it's a very, very fun game to play. And despite some of its shortcomings and the fact it reuses more assets than a cheap Unity flip, it's still great fun to play, and I've enjoyed playing this series so much for you guys. It's always been one of my favorite series, and despite the fact that my channel isn't really that big, it's starting to get some more views, and I'm very grateful for everybody who watches. I just always wanted to record these games and say that, you know, there's evidence out there that I played them and talked about how much I love them. And I hope I inspired some people to pick them up and play them, and probably play them better than I did. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you've enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching. And if this video is still going on, please enjoy the rest.
We did it. I did it.
What's happening?
Limbo has collapsed into the real world. What was once hidden is now laid bare for all to see. Revolution is in the air.
I never believed I'd live to see this day.
It's the beginning of the end for the demons. Mankind would be free.
Yes. Free from the demons. The path is clear for us to rule.
What did you just say?
The path is clear for us to rule.
To rule what?
This. Everything.
Virgil,
You mean like Mundus?
No. No. We'll be nothing like Mundus. We'll respect our subjects, not enslave them.
subjects.
He means you. He means humans.
I thought we were fighting for freedom.
It was his freedom we were fighting for, not yours.
Don't be so simplistic. Humans are frail. They're like children. They need protection. Not just from others, but from themselves. We, you and I, have saved them.
You and I saved them?
Who else?
A human.
Cat was useful, but
Useful.
Cat saved my life. Cat held out under torture to keep your existence a secret. Cat led us through the tower to Mundus's lair. We would have failed 20 times over if it weren't for her.
listen. If you can't see the chaos that humans will cause, if you don't want the responsibility of protecting them, then stand aside. I'll rule alone.
I didn't help you destroy Mundus so that you could take his place. I can't let you do this, Virgil.
And I can't let you stop me, brother. Stand aside.
Don't do this.
Virgil, please.
Stay out of this!
Sorry, brother.
Don't be.
It's not too late.
Yes, it is.
begging you. Please stop. For me.
The world is under my protection now.
You've chosen the wrong side. You're not human, Dante. You never will be. I loved you, brother.
I don't know who I am anymore.
I know exactly who you are. You are Dante. Nothing more and nothing less.
Self-medicating, craving punishment. Blaming myself for a world on fire. No more shame, no more pity, no more. I will suffer, I will burn, let hate prevail. Enslave my soul, but I'll never surrender. I will suffer, I will burn, let hate prevail. Enslave my soul, but I'll never surrender. Mental cancer hijacks your brain, denying the reality you created for yourself. Rise from the ashes. I will suffer, I will burn, let hate prevail. Enslave my soul, but I'll never surrender. I will suffer.
name is Dante.